The evidence is clear. There will not be just transitions towards climate resilient and land degradation neutral landscapes without securing the legitimate land tenure rights of those who live and work on the land.
When we are looking at issues of accessibility to land, we have an expectation that this land has to change our lives.
It took us a long time to think about the Sustainable Development Agenda as one agenda. I think we now have to be much quicker in realizing that the Human Rights Agenda and the Sustainable Development Agenda are the same agenda.
TMG was in the position to contribute to UNCCD COP in various ways. Alexander Müller, our managing director, was invited to address the high-level segment of the COP to already explore what parties are thinking of these far-reaching decisions.
If you talk to any of the farmers in your country, he or she will tell you land is local. It's my biggest and strongest asset, and I need support in order to manage it in a sustainable way. But at the same time, the ecosystem services provided by land are of utmost importance for the whole world. So applying best practices to land stewardship at local level, in the end, will contribute to achieve global goals. There's a close interlinkage, but we have to create an enabling environment for the farmers. They cannot do it for free, and they need our support.
On behalf of the European Union's member states and in Germany in particular, TMG was invited to negotiate the land tenure decision that was adopted at COP15. We are very grateful for having been given the opportunity to host 3 side events at this COP, ranging from the launch of the Human Rights and Land Navigator to a discussion on how land tenure and legitimate land tenure rights are key to democratize and transform food systems, and last but not least, to showcase the experience of our country partners in implementing the land tenure decision and share the knowledge with other parties to the convention.
About 24 billion tons of fertile soils is lost every year, affecting more than 3.2 billion people. There's an increasing global awareness that the way we manage our land and soils is fundamental for achieving sustainable development.
As we commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Committee on World Food Security's voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries and forests, there is still a substantial gap between global guidance and actual practice in many countries. Secure land tenure rights are simply not where they need to be to meet the ambition of the 2030 Agenda.
We come to forums such as the one we are at today. We agree on decisions to take, and countries come up with plans and policies on how they will implement these decisions at the national level. But we also acknowledge that often we get a disconnect between these global and national level decisions and local actions at the local level.
Aujourd'hui, chez nous, il y a des gens qui ne sont pas propriétaires de terre, mais qui l'utilisent. Il est important d'introduire cette thématique du droit d'usage qui permet donc aux communautés, à la personne qui prête une terre, qui a une location, qui a un bail, de pouvoir se sentir partie prenante parce qu'il a une durée de contrat qui lui permet de savoir que dans 1 an, dans 2 ans, il est toujours sur cette terre et d'accepter donc d'introduire les pratiques de gestion durable des terres.
Il faut se souvenir que les directives volontaires pour une gouvernance responsable des régimes fonciers ont été établies sur la base du droit à une alimentation adéquate. Le texte en lui-même respecte et intègre tous les éléments des approches basées sur les droits, en particulier une participation informée de tous, une inclusivité, une égalité de genre. Donc pourquoi est-ce que c'est important quand on traite de la pauvreté, de la sécurité alimentaire? Eh bien, essentiellement, c'est que pour que personne ne reste en dehors.
We are very delighted here to listen to the materialization of this groundbreaking decision of land tenure 26 COP14. I'm really glad to see that together with TMG, GIZ, other partners, we can bring and showcase here to the decision makers that by tackling the issue of tenure, we can help definitely in implementing our convention.
Human rights are not voluntary commitments. They are obligations that states have towards people. And a human rights-based approach to the implementation of the VGGT and the UNCCD really means putting people at the center of its action, listening to the voices of people in vulnerable situations.
Access to land and resources is essential for also realizing a number of other human rights enshrined in core binding human rights instruments, including the right to an adequate standard of living, housing, property, food, water, etc. So we're trying to bring all of this together in one tool and make human rights more accessible to the land community.
But the question is how that works actually exactly. For people who are not really having a legal background, this might be difficult to actually navigate yourself through all these human rights instruments. So this is actually how the idea of making the navigator, this tool, has begun.
We thought it would be good to have a tool that can help you in making your case for advocating for land and in land for land claims.
And for example, in one case, we were looking at the issues to do with the encroachment, where there was a public institution that had to take land from the vulnerable people some time back. So it really helped us looking at also what specific recommendations we can make in order to resolve those conflicts. So already we have been able to see how important the tool can be, because it's easy to use.
We as the German Development Ministry have been supporting this project because we believe it has a huge lot of potential. Firstly, to ensure that restoration activities in the context of UNCCD implementation do not negatively affect the legitimate land and resource rights of local peoples, especially if we're looking at marginalized groups such as women, youth, indigenous peoples, and that land conflicts are avoided. That is what we would call the do no harm approach.
I would just add that also this is a tool that connects very strongly with a fundamental element on land tenure dynamics, which is the collective action. It does provide to the groups of smallholder farmers and other groups, it provides then a very important mechanism through which they can bring the collective action to also the point of holding the rebels to account, including by the use of the legal system and the human rights structure. So I think it is a fundamental step forward to the objective that we all pursue together.
The negotiations on the land tenure decision at this COP have just been successfully concluded. Parties have reiterated their intent to apply the voluntary principles of the voluntary guidelines in their national programs to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought.
If we want to engage our youth, our communities in land ownership, we need to first have the land tenure security, right? Then you know your long-term restoration work is actually going to benefit and going to work, because restoration takes patience and we need to do it for the long term.
In my country, 70% of our lands are communally held and registered, and they have fluid tenure. In 2016, Kenya passed Community Land Act, but from 2016 to 2022, only 10 communities have been able to register. We have been working, first of all, to build on community protocols because they are there. They used to have their own traditional ways of ensuring that their lands are productive.
The solutions to land degradation are as diverse as the communities implementing them. So we're hoping to support land rights as a critical mechanism that allows people to find, implement, and also scale the most appropriate solutions for themselves and also for their communities by engaging them in the decision-making processes around their own land.
What we've tried to do is actually not only ensure that through participatory mapping processes their rights are guaranteed, but also ensure that at the same time the sustainable use of the land is guaranteed. And that is a nice way in which land governance work and land use work come together.
I've been in meetings where governments are reporting, and sometimes I wonder where these facts are actually coming from. But if they bring community on board, then we as communities are able to break it in the realistic facts that determine how life is changing, how the human perspective is being realized.